Welcome to Reels on the Rocks, the show where your hosts Whiskey and Sweet Tea discuss film from the unpretentious perspective. Today's topic, the 1989 animated phenomenon My Neighbor Totoro. Due to a discussion of fan theories of the film, a content warning is in effect regarding the following topics: sexual assault, suicide. And as always, please be advised spoilers are ahead. Hey everyone!
Welcome back.
It's ya boys.
It's your boys.
Whiskey and Sweet Tea.
Are you guys ready to anime and chill? Because I don't know if you heard, but this is the month of anime.
Oh my god, I just figured something out for later in this podcast.
Oh,
but
goodness.
Yes. Okay.
Oh, goodness.
Okay.
All right, so, we're the first film. It's hilarious. You'll find out on the next episode, but the films that we're covering this month are kind of hilariously polar opposite of each other.
Yes.
So we're starting with the good feels today.
But in the same year.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I didn't know if you were going to pick that up too. So,
I noticed that on Hulu when I pulled up your movie. I'm like, oh.
So in case you can't read the title, we're talking about My Neighbor Totoro.
Or if you're me, My Neighbor Totoro. It was directed by Hayao Miyazaki.
Oh yes, Walt Disney of Japan.
And then it was animated by Tokuma Shoton. I will probably butcher a lot of these names. I apologize to an entire culture of people right here. And then the music was by Joe Hisaishi. Now we will be reviewing the English dub version, so I'm gonna read the voice cast for that. So we have
Sorry for the sub fans out there. Although I mean I grew up with this one, so I watch it like I don't care. Like if it's dubbed. I'm down.
I think there's multiple dub versions of this movie, but I think the one that we watched, which I think you watched the Disney one too for this review.
I've seen both of them. The one I always go back to is the Fox version.
Okay.
That's the one I grew up with, and I'll explain. The Disney one's not horrible, but there's one kind of glaring issue I have with it that's just a weird casting choice, but other than that,
so the dub produced by Disney in 2004, was released in 2005. We had Dakota Fanning as Satsuki, Elle Fanning as May, Timothy Daly as the father, which you won't know this, but I'd know Timothy Daly as Joe Hackett on the show Wings. So, and I'm guessing you didn't watch Wings?
No, not really, but I know what it is.
Pat Carroll as Granny, and Lee Solanza as the mom, Frank Welker as Totoro and the Cat Bus, and then the songs, while dubbed over I believe it's a direct translation from the Japanese version, but the songs on this version were by Sonia Isars. And see, and I apologize because my handwriting's terrible.
I'm still just I have zoned out because as soon as you said someone did the voice for Totoro, I'm just laughing internally because I always assumed it was just animal noises or something.
Well, the grunts in different cultures mean different things.
I guess so. I honestly didn't think that they would even... That's just funny. I never knew that a person actually voiced him,
Right? I was expecting him to say something because this is my first time watching this. I was expecting him to say something, and then he doesn't. So I'm kind of a little confused about that as well. I'm actually concerned now. So was there a different person who did the grunts for the original release?
It makes you wonder. That's the other thing I was hung up on. I was like, is there a Japanese voice actor who grunted differently for their
maybe his grunts were anyway, that's okay.
Or
We'll get to that in a minute. So
that's the other impressive thing. Totoro can roar real loud, so if that was a person, that's pretty impressive.
Speaking of roaring pretty loud, so this film failed to really reach any award shows on this end of the island.
So here's the
I'll get to that in a minute as to why that happened.
Well, the big thing is that nowadays we take for granted the fact that because both of these films actually kind of, this applies to both of them, is that this is before the best feature animated category was
Right.
invented. That started after 1991 because Beauty and the Beast.
Because everybody got upset that it was up for Best Picture. Which
Yeah.
Those people can calm down.
Right? I like the actual Best Picture winner, but I think Beauty and the Beast was equally
I thought it was equally
deserving
of
it.
on a different end of the spectrum, but equally deserving.
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, so that's the thing is like this was a very different time. It was actually very difficult for anime to reach the West. Like nowadays, super easy to see anime shows like the day after they come out in Japan and stuff.
Right.
Now it's
We're much more connected world.
Yeah, now it's like you'd have to hope for a limited release in theaters. You'd have to hope that it was popular enough to get a VHS release. So it was a very different time. And additionally, even if it was recognized by critics the way this film was, probably wouldn't really be nominated for anything at the Academy Awards because they didn't really respect animated features as well as they do now.
I still think they don't respect them now, but that's another topic for another time. So this film did win some awards at the, and I again apologize for my pronunciation on some of these things, but the Kinope Jumpo Awards, it won Best Film. And then it was also the Reader's Choice for Best Japanese Film. It won that. At the Mainichi Film Award, it won Best Film, and it won something else. I didn't get a chance to look more into it, but it's called the Ofuji Noboro Award. At the Anime Awards, it won the Grand Prix prize. And then the first dub of the film actually won an award at the Saturn Awards for Best Genre Video Release, which I found quite interesting.
Well, and the thing, this is your first time seeing it. I'm not a huge anime fanatic. I have certain films and TV shows I like, but I'm not a weeaboo or an otaku or any of that stuff. But,
which, if you are, that's totally cool.
But along with all of, the classic Disney movies, this is a film I grew up with. I had this on VHS. This is something I watched when I was like a toddler and had Miyazaki is equal for me as a lot of kids growing up with Disney and stuff. So obviously I wasn't watching Princess Mononoke or some of his little scarier movies, but this is and I think that's the other thing I'm sure you were going to get to is this was financially super well received. At least in my notes, I believe. Yeah, it got a 30 million worldwide gross. So maybe
I was reading
something
about
I
this.
don't.
So I was reading this. So when this film first released, it was a flop.
Interesting.
And it was originally released as a double feature with Grave of the Fireflies.
Oh my god.
Which,
in theaters?
in theaters.
That is a horrible idea.
Well, I had never seen Grave of the Fireflies, but I've always been told. I think you told me this.
I have seen Grave of the Fireflies.
My cousin told me this. It's a movie that just makes you cry your eyes out.
It is not. It is also. That is oh my god.
Well,
the fact that would be like someone putting Tangled with I don't know.
Snow White and the Huntsman?
Yeah, or even more appropriate, it'd be like a double feature of Beauty and the Beast and Silence of the Lambs. Both great movies, but, those kids that like Beauty and the Beast probably aren't going to enjoy Silence of the Lambs.
This movie precedes the formation of Studio Ghibli. Or Ghibli, depending on how you pronounce it. So this precedes that. So at the time this came out, there were a lot of people were very concerned that it wasn't going to have an audience, that nobody was going to pay to see, which I guess kind of proved to be true. So they paired it with Grave of the Fireflies because Grave of the Fireflies is based on a book, and so it had the backing of the publisher to put that movie out on. So the only way they get it released is if they paired the two together, and even I think the publisher was concerned about that at the same time, but they agreed to it. And so my first thing is because, like I said, I've always been told how amazing Grave of the Firefly is, but I've always been told it's such a depressing movie to watch.
Oh yes.
And especially when you watch, and I'm so glad I chose to watch the anime movies in this particular order this time.
Yes.
I watched yours first and then this one.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Because this movie is just, it's like literally if Wholesome was a movie. that would be the
No, absolutely. That's part of the reason I like talked about how I watched it as a toddler. This is on par with like Disney as far as being just something little kids can appreciate. It's got just enough drama for there to be like something to worry about in kind of the final act of the movie, but without it being really scary or really like it is just honestly I watch this movie now if I'm just having a bad day and just want to see a cute furry magical creature that can fly.
And like I was watching because I've started watching different YouTubers, and I was watching this one YouTuber. She does a lot of cottagecore stuff. Her name's Darling Desi, and she was talking about how she always watches Studio Ghibli films in like the spring and summer because she says they just kind of just fill her with the spring and summer vibe, which I totally get.
All of them have a very like nature. In fact, actually, they're making I read this ages ago, but I know that they're still working on it. They're making a Studio Ghibli theme park in Japan, but it's not going to be like a theme park with rides and stuff. It's basically going to be like a nature reserve. Mm-hmm. Because that's like it's not just this movie. Princess Mononoke is another one. Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind. Like a lot of his movies are very big on protecting your natural environment, and that's always been something that's super important to him. And yeah, like I mean, who wouldn't? That's another kind of thing about this film is the setting. Yes, I've always loved how just I want to live in this town, you know. It's just it's like a very nice like I wonder if
the good news is you can.
Oh yeah, I know it's based on a real place.
So it's based on the city of Tokurozawa.
You did your research. I'm wondering
which is actually where Miyazaki's home is.
Okay.
He has gone on record saying that if he hadn't lived there, My Neighbor Totoro wouldn't have become a thing. Like a lot of the whole idea of the spirit, the forest spirits, the just the traveling back and forth they do in there, a lot of it is just inspired by him wandering these paths in the city. And what's interesting is, it was a rural city, at the time. And it's become to be developed and built up. And so there's been a push to really kind of preserve a lot of the undeveloped areas of this, and he's very, like you talked about, he's very, very passionate about conservation and all sorts of stuff. So if you know anything about Studio Ghibli, they put a lot of on lock and key, a lot of the character designs, a lot of the things there's not. It's very hard to like really get like them to even lease anything out to people, but he lent the image of Totoro to the effort to conserve these areas in this town. This is how much he felt about this. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Oh yeah, and what a great mascot he is. I'm actually I'm gonna jump to I'm very impressed with how much research you've done on this film, and I'm actually wondering.
Gave me the feels.
So I'm gonna for me, just because I like to keep this podcast kind of interesting, especially when a lot of the time we're usually recommending the films, and I'm sure if you clicked on this, you probably are like, there's no way they're gonna hate this movie. So I had an interesting kind of angle I was going to do. I'm wondering if you know about sort of this theory with the movie. It's not gonna. Don't worry, it won't ruin all your warm and fuzzy feelings. So are you talking
about the feel that what's her called, May actually dies, and it's
you did all your research.
So fun fact,
I know it's not a real thing.
But but the thing is interesting is it got such prominence. This whole thing that it's the journey to death, and the reason why the only person who can never really see any of the character, like he never sees any of the forest spirits, and in like when they show up at the end to visit the mom, that the only person who doesn't see anything is the father because he's the only one that's not close to death.
Well, technically the mother doesn't see them. She says, I feel like they're sitting up there.
I thought she said, I thought I saw. Okay.
I thought I saw, but she can't. They're literally still there and she can't see them.
That's true.
So first off, if Miyazaki says that was not his intention, I believe him.
I think it's interesting that it got such prominence that that the Studio Ghibli put out an official statement.
Well, again, I believe them, but it is pretty crazy how many coincidences there are. Like the fact that their shadows don't appear, the fact that right before the cat bus is like, next stop, little sister, the thing that it says up there is graveyard. in kanji.
See,
And the fact that when they do find Mei, she's sitting by Jizo statues, which are spirits that are meant to protect unborn or dead children. So again, personally, if I were going to read into it, I would think that it's supposed to be symbolic, that they didn't actually die, but like, you know, the threats or something.
Like maybe they just got close to death.
Yeah, if Miyazaki says he did not intend for that to be the thing, then I believe him. Also, the connection to the Sayama City incident is very loose. That like an incident that happened in the 1960s.
So
in case you don't know, there was a kidnapping.
Because I saw this. Yeah. I saw this sort of show up a few times. I didn't look enough into the incident, but so if you could fill us in.
Yeah. So this is the thing that makes people believe, like, and that's the other thing with this theory. It's not just like, oh, they died. It's like, oh, it's actually about this incident. I think that that's like the most tenuous part of this theory because it's ridiculous. But in May 1st of 1963, oh my god, it was an anime. It was in May of this. What a perfect episode to start this month off. In Sayama City, which actually neighbors the place that this is based off of, there was a kidnapping involving two sisters. And apologies, it gets a little dark here, but this person like wanted a ransom, but then chickened out, and like they actually never figured out who kidnapped this person. Like it was like a cold case, essentially, is a cold case. But they did find the body of the younger sister. She had been, you know, sexually assaulted and murdered. And this actually, like, the sadness actually, like, led the older sister to commit suicide. And here's the other thing, is both of these sisters were not, like, little kids. Like, the younger one was 16. So that gives you an idea. Like, they were, like, in the older teen years. So that's the other thing I find kind of weird about people trying to connect this incident with the film. It's like, it really doesn't... You know, if it was like about if the incident was like two little girls got lost trying to walk home and were never found, I could buy that. But the fact that people are trying to connect this homicide from the 60s to this happy kids film is silly to me. The idea that they died is ridiculous to me because there is a lot of just coincidental stuff in the like last act that is very odd. Like I said about the fact their shadows don't appear. The fact that the cat bus says they're going to a graveyard before they go to pick up Mei, the Jizo statue thing. Again, this depends, I guess, on who you talk to, but apparently, like, in Japanese culture, the idea of seeing Susuatari, which is, like, mythical creatures, usually means that you're probably going to die.
I mean, that's common in the Western side. Like, I know when my grandmother passed, a couple nights before she passed, she claimed to have seen her sister in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
and her sister had died years before.
Exactly. So, and then also, this is like an odd. This connects more to the Sayama City incident, but Satsuki actually translates to Mei in English.
So okay, yes.
So it's Mei and Mei and her sister Mei.
So and I read the same thing. I think this is Satsuki. Like it doesn't mean like Mei. It literally means like 5th month of the year or something like that. But basically Mei.
Yeah.
And
which I don't buy the whole Sayama City incident thing, but that is an odd coincidence. I feel again like the kind of
to be fair, there's been lots of cases of kidnapped siblings in history. So. I'm like, why? What about this particular one?
Well, and sometimes I also wonder if like people are kind of approaching this from a Western understanding of spirituality, because in Japanese, like you can enter the spirit realm, like these creatures like Totoro or like other things that you'd see in like Princess Mononoke. There's all these forest spirits and stuff. And they they exist in between, like they're not dead or alive, and so like obviously you can see them if you're like a dead person, but I don't know. I feel like we're like reading too binary into it. Like, oh, they're dead, so they can see Totoro. It's like maybe
when I read the theory and it was explaining, I'm like, yeah, I guess I can kind of see that. But to me, like when I saw. I'm just like, this is just about the magic of childhood.
Yes.
Like, it just really is. I mean, even when my favorite scene in it, and based on a lot of artwork I've seen, like, online and, like, all over the place, they usually depict this scene. of the three of them standing at the bus stop.
Oh,
that
man.
whole scene where he has the umbrella and he realizes he likes the sound it makes when rain falls onto it.
Fun
So
fact.
he's just trying to get rain to land. I'm like, that's like such a little kid thing to do. I just love it.
And also every time, personally, I am stuck at a scary bus stop in the middle of the night, I just like to imagine that he, like, that scene, or imagine, like, oh, it'd be really nice if a big furry, cute hairball thing was standing next to me, helping me pass the time.
I mean, it could be worse. You could have been standing at a bus stop at night with the knowledge that there was somebody that's riding around a bike slashing people at bus stops.
Exactly.
That happened to me.
Yikes.
So...
Well, and also, like, on the spirituality side of things, and the whole, again, like, me kind of finding it as, like, a Western thing to, like, be like, oh, if they can see him, he's dead. Another really amazing scene that they parodied in Bob's Burgers is the tree growing scene, because that's a thing where they have a dream that they're, you know, magically growing this tree out in their yard, and obviously it's a dream. They go flying and stuff, and they wake up in their beds the next day, but the trees have sprouted. So that's kind of like this weird, like, they didn't die or something in their sleep, but they were in, like, the spirit realm in their dreams.
Yeah.
So again, and that also might translate to why, like, the mother can't see them at the end. Like, they might not be literally dead, but maybe they have been kind of spirited into, like, another kind of, like, existence or something. Like, they're not dead and they
away.
Exactly. Well, I mean, future movie, and also more
I will say, though, Spirited Away, the only thing I know about it is whatever that mask creature is, and that mask creature...
Oh, No Face!
He freaks me out.
Oh, he cracks me up.
There's a character in Five Nights at Freddy's that looks exactly like him. Like, I discovered both of them around the same time, so I literally thought they were the same person.
No Face is funny, man. And maybe someone hearing me say that. The bit, if this is not a review of Spirited Away, but the bit where he kind of loses his mind in the bathhouse always cracks me up. Even though he is sort of a dangerous monster for that period of the movie, it's just, I don't know, all these mean spirits getting attacked by him always makes me laugh. And he's very chill. Not a Spirited Away review. We're getting off topic, but well, you should watch more Miyazaki movies. I feel like he's right up your alley.
Let's get back on topic.
Yeah.
So what's interesting? So this is also, I guess, partially biographical.
Yes.
About, especially as it relates to the mother being ill. I guess when he was younger, his mother had, I believe it was called
tuberculosis.
Spinal tuberculosis.
Yes.
And it was the same thing. She was out for like months and months. She was eventually able to come home and have partially at-home care. It was all, but it was very, very, but you know, so I kind of wonder, because he also talked about how he wouldn't have made this movie if he hadn't lived in this town. So I'm kind of like, which idea really came sort of first? Did he do it? Then he, like, did he think about making a magical world because of this town, and then he kind of tied in some of his past trauma, or did he always kick around sort of having something to do to work through this through one of his projects? That I've always thought that was kind of interesting.
He's always struck me as a very, like, imaginative person, and especially if this is a lot to do with his childhood, I'd like to imagine that while his mother was sick, he probably was out in the woods playing and kind of imagining these characters.
A butterfly.
Well, you know what I mean? Like, if he was, like, a very young child and stuff, like, I could imagine him, like, you know, oh, there's a Totoro over there, let me chase him around. You know, like, I imagine him, I don't know how old he was when his mother was ill, but if he was, like, around May's age, that's kind of what I imagine, and maybe he came up with a lot of these ideas. Obviously, like, and I don't know if it's the same with you, but sometimes I'll have an idea from when I was a kid for, like, a cool story or something.
Yes, yeah.
So that's the thing. Like, maybe these were, like, games he played, and they just stuck with him, and maybe it's like, oh, I could tell
Unfortunately,
this really...
a lot of my ideas as a kid were derived, so...
Well, and a lot of these... That's the other thing, too. These creatures are not, like... Obviously, the design is, you know, from the company and everything, but, like, a Totoro is actually the direct translation. Like, it means troll, essentially. So this is, like, the Japanese version of what a troll is, which makes me wonder if, like, when Japanese people hear us use the term for, like, mean people on the internet, if they, like, are like, but why a troll? They're so cute and cuddly.
They're so adorable.
They're so adorable. But yeah, so, like, all of these things are like the soot sprites and all of that stuff. Again, like, the term for, like, mythical creature is Susu Atari. and I'm probably mispronouncing that, but like these are all things that already exist.
Yeah.
And even like another, I keep bringing up Princess Mononoke, but that one's also just filled with like Japanese mythical monsters and stuff like that. So like he takes from the culture, obviously, like he adds his own twist to it. Like Totoro's exist, but because of this film and because of Studio Ghibli, like if you hear Totoro, his character design is what comes to mind.
Right. Well, you know what's interesting about his character design is, you know, when you first meet him, it's a little sort of off-putting because May goes and like lays on his
belly.
She goes, lays on his belly, and so he's waking up, and so he kind of like goes, he wraps his paw around her, and then he opens his mouth, and the first I'm like, oh my god, is he gonna eat her? Like, because that's literally that's the first thing, because the way, and that's also, and I'm like, I don't, maybe this is like a spiritual journey to mean something, and I'm like, okay, no, he's not.
No. You've been on the internet too long. Stop. You've seen too many.
There's certain ways that it's drawn that nowadays is sort of like I find just a little bit creepy.
It's today's anime, man. You have an expectation of what's gonna happen, and you forget that the movie's rated G.
The smile on Totoro when he smiles, and the smile on the cat, I both think are really kind of just creepy.
I think it's creepier on the cat. Totoro's just cute to me, but the cat sometimes makes faces where I'm like, oh. But at the same time, I'd love to ride on that bus. I bet it's so damn comfy.
Well, you know, I love how when the door opens or like it expands to let them on, it's kind of like sort of like a spaceship sound. It's kind of cool. Yeah, and so that was also something that was kind of you kind of also see like I want to say like Western influences on at least the sound design or the Foleying on this film, because there are certain scenes and I'm like, this just sounds very Hanna-Barbera. Like one of the ones that I think it was towards the beginning of the movie. They were running and they had like the classic like Hanna-Barbera scrambling sound. So it's just I'm like, okay, so some things translate across the medium. In animation, anytime someone runs, this is the sound we use. But one of the things I really liked about this is the relationship between May and Satsuki, right? Satsuki.
Yes.
Okay, I'm so worried I'm gonna mess these names up.
Nah, thankfully, Satsuki's name is...
It's
I don't know, maybe it's because
it's pretty memorable.
And also, again, maybe it's because I grew up hearing the character name, but yeah, I've never thought it was too hard to...
I love their... Especially when they first arrived there. And like I said, it's really about the magic of childhood. They're seeing excitement in stuff like, the porch is rotted. This is cool. Let's push on it. Which I'm like, I could totally see me doing as a kid. Now I think it's cool. Back then, like when I was a kid, they were like, "Oh my god, we're so excited! That house is haunted."
I was gonna say, if a neighbor boy told you your house was haunted, you'd get so excited. You'd be like, "Oh, I'm sleeping in the attic. I'm gonna see if I can talk to a ghost."
I've actually come around to the haunting thing pretty recently in life, but like as a kid that would terrify me. But you know what, and again, I think it again has to do with the cultural difference where there isn't this ingrained fear of spirits.
Well, like not just that, but there is because there's a little bit of this subtly in the movie, but why can't I remember this? It's actually plays a bigger role in Spirited Away. We're not reviewing Spirited Away. No, but so one thing that like Japan's interesting religiously because they don't really like, for instance, in Japan it's very normal to have like a Christian wedding even if you're not Christian, because they don't really see religion the same way we do, where it's like they pick and choose. You know what I mean? They do a lot of things, and part of it comes from, and thankfully while I was rambling, I remembered the Shinto religion, which is kind of like everything has a spirit. Even inanimate objects have spirits. Yes, Shinto is so again, like that understanding of quote unquote ghosts or spirits, it's like it's not scary over unless the spirit is like angry or something, then you should be afraid of it. But just if there were a ghost or a spirit in your house, it's like cool, there's ghosts and spirits everywhere.
If you really think about it, like even crossing over into Disney territory, one of the Disneyland Japans over there, their haunted mansion is not like ours. It's like
awesome.
It's like a
Mystic Manor.
It's Mystic Manor. It's like an enchanted house of curiosities,
Exactly.
where everything, has like a almost like everything has like a soul and everything. But they did that because of the way that spirits and hauntings are treated over there, as opposed to, because from my understanding, and again, I don't want to speak about entire culture that I don't know a lot about, but from my understanding of things, it's like over here when somebody says you have a ghost, we are predisposed to think that it's evil. And over there, it's like there's ghosts.
Well, it's normal. Everywhere there's a spirit, like, so the idea of like, there's,
it can be bad, but it can also be good, but they don't immediately assume it's the bad kind, because anytime someone hears about our house, they're like, oh my god, does it try to scare you?
It's kind of like saying, there's a spirit living in the tree behind your house. That might scare someone here, but in Japan that might mean you have a big fuzzy cuddle ball living in a tree behind your house.
Like, okay, let's be real, cuddling with Totoro is an entire mood. It really is. If I could just like crawl up on a giant fuzzy warm ball and just go to sleep like May does, that would be. I'm like I would not mind any problems for the rest of the day.
I feel like that section of the movie probably usually made me want to take a nap as a little kid if I think of it. And so you said you saw the 2004 dub, right? The Disney one.
So there are so in my reading there was at least two major dubs. There's the Fox Video one, which was done in 1993 and then won a Saturn Award, I guess, in 1995. And then there is the more widely accepted and utilized one now, which is the 2004 Disney one. And that one's interesting. That actually made its television premiere on TCM. During their salute to Miyazaki.
Well, so I mentioned I prefer the Fox dub, and maybe you'll, because this is your first time seeing it, but the one thing I thought was just kind of a bad idea casting wise. I generally like the Disney dub, but Dakota and Elle Fanning, they're great actresses, but by the time they were cast in this, they were both kind of like in their early teen years.
But they still sounded like kids.
Not May. May's like 5 years old. When Elle spoke, it took me right out of it. Like, and maybe if you feel like rewatching it, seeking out the Fox dub, you'll see what I'm talking about. But they got like a little kid to do the voice for May. Right. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's hard to explain. They did a fine job with the material. And again, they're both great actresses. I just felt like, because in 2004, I don't know how old they were. It was mostly May. I feel like Dakota did a fine job with Satsuki, and it wasn't like Elle did a bad job. She just did not sound like a 5-year-old. She sounded like a 12-year-old doing a 5-year-old's voice. Well, but other than that, it's a fine dub. I still would recommend, if you're going to go do the Fox one.
And I could be wrong with what I was reading. I think this is actually also the dub that Miyazaki prefers.
That's interesting.
The English one, 'cause I think he had more to do with this dub than the other one. One
thing that they didn't do that bothers me when they do it with like dubbed movies is replacing the music. And that is something that's not the case. Whether you're watching the original with subtitles, whether you're watching the Fox or the Disney dub, music is the same, and I love that. One other film by Miyazaki that I really like is Kiki's Delivery Service, and I grew up with the Disney dub of that one. Which is frustrating because Disney almost redid all of the music. Yeah. So now it's like I respect the original, but like for nostalgia's sake, I always want to hear the original music. So that's another thing I give points to the Disney dub for doing, is they didn't touch the music.
I think all they essentially did was they just re-recorded the English dub from the other one.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Like the song, it's a different singer. I actually think they got Elsa to do it for the Disney one. You know who I'm talking about?
Idina Menzel.
Idina Menzel.
For which one?
For the newest one, the Disney one. I think I might be wrong about that, but I feel like they got someone who was in their
Did you wait the
Hey,
Disney?
Hey, let's go. That song, the beginning. I think it was Idina Menzel. I might be wrong.
So in the Disney dub, that was done by Sonia I6.
Okay, so I'm totally remembering that wrong. But that's good. It sounds like they got someone.
So, and I talked about previously about I really like the relationship between the sisters in the movie, which is interesting because the movie was almost done with one heroine.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think it still would have been adorable, but I don't think it would be as relatable because like a lot of like especially the later conflict in the movie comes from their relationship.
Exactly.
So I'm trying to figure out what would they have done,
and
how would that have worked.
Yeah, that's the thing. This movie, it's hard to really put into a category because most of the movie, it almost
adorable. I'm calling the category adorable.
Adorable, but it's not like something, you know. Especially again, like a lot of the films I grew up with outside of this were like things like Disney movies or like Star Wars or Wizard of Oz, where there's like a very understandable like you know conflict or threat, and there isn't one in this until the very end of the movie. Like most of it is just sort of these little like almost short stories stitched together.
But even at the end, I wouldn't even actually call it a threat.
No, but you know what I mean. It's like
there wasn't a main conflict.
There wasn't an antagonist. There wasn't like you know like the only real like kind of maybe worrisome thing is that their mom's in the hospital. But when they visit her, she seems okay. She's getting better. Mm-hmm. Turns out by the end of the movie, it was all a misunderstanding, and she's still doing fine. But that's kind of something that I feel like makes this movie really unique even for a kids movie, is that it's almost like little vignettes stitched together of like different things happening. Here's the day where May is by herself and she meets Totoro. Here's the day where their dad can't pick them up and they go to the bus stop in the rain. Here's the day where May has to come to school because the dad can't.
You know what that reminds me of? Did you ever see Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium?
I did not, because I heard it was really bad when it came out.
I like it. I didn't see it when it came out. I saw it on TV, and so I kind of have a fondness for it.
It's one,
but it's sort of the same thing. It's a lot of these just vignettes, and they're but unlike with My Neighbor Totoro, they're literally split up by like chapter pages.
Yes. I wouldn't want them to do that with Totoro, because it goes with the mood it's creating of just being in this very like relaxed country environment. So like I feel like if they put like chapter 1, mm-hmm. like I like it more that these bleed together and you kind of don't even really know how long it's been since they've moved into the house by the end of the movie. Mm-hmm. I would guess maybe 6 months, or maybe 3 months even, like if it was like spring when they moved there and summer by the time the movie's over, which we know it's summer by the time the movie's over because they're wearing summer dresses. Right. They're, you know, but again, like you don't even really get a good sense of how long they've been there. And a part of that kind of goes with this very laid back, naturalistic, slow pace. And that's the other interesting thing about this is like I feel like this film is a lot more slow paced than a lot of kids movies, partly because there's not a lot of drama going mm-hmm. on. It's just, you know, what are we doing today?
There's not a lot of drama, but I feel like what really drives the energy is wanting to see Totoro again.
Yes. Oh yeah, he doesn't get as much screen time as you would think, but when he does, is really like he's just a very. Again, like it's funny that he's the mascot of Studio Ghibli because he reminds me of a Disney character or mascot because he's very lovable. Like even just the image of him, like
I just love how when somebody comes to help, his first response is just to wah.
Well, and the things that he likes too, like he loves like his umbrella that they give him. He's got that weird spinning top thing. That is such
a precious scene when they're just sitting there. She gives the umbrella. A thing falls and he's like, "Oh, this is kind of cool." Morphall, this is really cool. Okay, I'm gonna trigger an avalanche of rain.
Well, and also just the fact, and it makes sense again because he's a forest spirit, so you're essentially giving him like a piece of technology. So like for him, he just had that leaf on his head that was protecting him. Yeah. And so to him, it just blew his mind. Like, whoa, this thing is so cool. And I love how when he's flying around,
he never puts it away for the rest of the movie. No, he just has it out.
He always has it because it's his new favorite thing, and I love it too. He opens it when he's flying around, and there's no reason for him to do it. I think he just likes
like a little kid.
Exactly.
Like, okay, this the thing
or like a natural like. Again, he's a forest spirit, so like he's not in touch with like modern technology, and he probably is more like, I don't want to call him like animalistic, but in the same way like a puppy kind of thinks like a toddler. You know, same with him.
And it's also because I was just thinking about this, and it reminds me of don't laugh. But when I was a kid, I had this thing where I would run around with like I think it was a spoon. We had a spoon that looked different than the other spoons, so I would play pretend as like a fairy princess thing, and I would use the spoon as like my wand. I had an actual magic wand, but I was more interested in the spoon. It really kind of gives credence to how kids have the ability to find magic in the mundane.
Well, and even when Totoro gives them the thing of acorns, the package of acorns, you know, they're excited. They're like, "Oh my god, we could plant a tree. We're gonna plant a garden," and you know, it's.
And I love how dedicated they are to it. They're just like sitting there watching it.
Not to sound like a total boomer, but it is just like it's almost sad. Like, you know, kids can get so excited about things, and it brings me back to a simpler time, because I don't know, I do feel sometimes out of touch with like kids that have like iPads and stuff now. Again, I sound like such a boomer saying that, but it's like,
that's a rant for another video.
Seriously. But yeah, that's something this movie, like this, after watching this, it makes me like want to go on a hike or something, like, because it just has that effect where it's like, oh, I'm just tuning out. And this
movie, it was has gained such a I wouldn't say critical.
No, critical.
It's now it has kind of a critical.
No, when it came out, critics loved it. Like,
okay.
Roger Ebert said it was like one of the best, and that's the thing. Just because it didn't make a lot of money doesn't mean that critics didn't like it or audiences didn't like it at the time. In fact, the fact that it got a VHS release says something about how well it was received.
Apparently, because it didn't do well in the theaters, it was cheap to pick up for TV. And so when they started running it on TV, they said that the ratings like went through the roof for this movie, and then that allowed it to do a lot of stuff. But like it became such a phenomenon that a lot of big time animators now credit this movie and the work of Miyazaki overall as influencing them, inspiring them. He makes an appearance in Toy Story 3. Which I'm like, that's mean. He makes an appearance with the daycare toys that all suck. So I'm like, oh, that's nice. He's even appeared in things like South Park. And he's even gone as far as he has an asteroid named after him.
He's huge, man.
10160 Totoro.
We started this review with me calling him the Walt Disney of Japan.
Well,
he is. I'm not even, and that's the thing too. I'm honestly surprised that this.
Not to offend anybody, but I actually think he's better than the Walt Disney of Japan.
I agree. Well, I
think he came from a place of seeing magic, and I feel like Walt Disney came from a place of wanting to preserve the wholesomeness of his own childhood.
Well, when I'm comparing him to Disney, it's not so much about their character or their personality; it's about their influence.
Yeah,
he is as big as Disney is. And he's from Japan. I'm not saying in Japan. He has as much influence as Walt Disney nowadays, in my opinion. And I don't even think that's my opinion. I think that's pretty proven. That I believe you about it not doing well in theaters and stuff. But again, the fact that I had a VHS of this as a kid, the original VHS, I'm imagining the one that came out in 95, because I was born in the early 90s, so it's like,
you mean 70s. Just kidding.
Yeah, I'm actually 59. No, but yeah, the fact that I even had that as a kid, I feel like kind of shows that it wasn't mainstream when I was a kid, but the fact that I had a VHS copy
now, not to be lame, but I did discover the works of Studio Ghibli until Ponyo came out.
Yeah, I'd been watching Studio Ghibli since I was like
and so,
3.
A lot of my friends were like, oh my god, I was raised on this and this, and to me, that incorrectly, I was like, this wasn't a thing until Ponyo came out.
Not at all.
I know
dude.
Now I know that, but it's like, but that was my first really exposure.
Another great one you'd probably like is Howl's Moving Castle, and that was actually up for best. I think it might have even won Best Animated that year. But much like Disney, every time Studio Ghibli releases a movie, it's usually nominated at the Oscars for Best Animated Feature. But this, we'll get into it in the next review, but both of these movies came out at a time when anime wasn't a big thing, and they both were extremely influential in getting Western audiences into anime for different reasons, but...
Well, and I also think, just speaking of this film, and what just makes this, and why this will be 7 thumbs way up for me, is it's really just a movie about experiencing magic where you don't even think there's magic. Like, obviously in this world there's tree spirits in life, so there's there's like physical magic, but then there's also, like we said, we talk about the whole scene with the umbrella, just finding magic in the mundane and just letting yourself be swept up in it. And I think that's a mesh that's missing from a lot of kids films today.
Absolutely. And it still has that effect on me now. This is a movie that makes me want to go outside.
Yes. Well, and there's that one YouTuber, she watches it every spring and summer because it gets her in the mood for spring and summer.
Yeah, I wouldn't, like, some Miyazaki movies maybe not, but a lot of his movies have that kind of summery spring sort of quality. But this movie in particular always makes me feel like, oh man, I'm going for a hike now or something like that, because it's got that. It really just puts nature at the forefront of the focus of the movie, and it's really like nice and relaxing. And it's so beautifully animated too. The bit where they're picking the vegetables. Scored. Oh yeah, and but like it's at the end of the movie where they're picking vegetables and stuff. That always makes me like really hungry when they got the corn, I know, the tomato, the cucumber.
I'm like, I want a salad.
Right.
After watching,
I never say that, but Totoro makes me want a salad.
Yes. So. Unfortunately, this movie is not available to really stream anywhere.
Yeah, it's on HBO Max.
It's on HBO Max.
All of Miyazaki's movies are on HBO Max.
I apologize. I don't have HBO Max for personal reasons.
Well, and it's weird too because, and maybe I should have. God, I forgot to look this up. But I remember around Spirited Away, I could have sworn Disney purchased Studio Ghibli, so it was like under Disney's parent company. So maybe
Studio Ghibli is still independent.
Okay.
They have worked with Disney to secure Western releases.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
I never want Disney to have control over Studio Ghibli. I feel like it would ruin it.
I don't think it would ruin it. I think that it's kind of like the Marvel movies. They're all, in my opinion, they're all good, but it's like factory made. You know what I mean? It's like even when a Marvel movie is really good, it feels like it was. Yeah,
it just has a specific feel.
Well, it just feels like it was made by like a board of directors instead of like an artist. You know, it's still like an enjoyable thing to consume, but it doesn't have that sort of personality to it. And I think if Disney were to purchase it, that's what would happen. Like, I don't think the quality of the movies would dip, but I feel like it would feel a lot more.
I think they would
targeted.
I think they would look similar, but they wouldn't feel the same. It would be like what's that quote? It's like ordering champagne and getting ginger ale. They both look the same, but they don't make you feel the same.
But yeah, obviously, if it isn't apparent, like, this is a recommend for both of us, and I'm going to just say you should watch much more of the Studio Ghibli movies, because Music of the Heart was not Hayao Miyazaki, but it was the same studio. I think you'd really enjoy that. It's about an awkward teenage girl who writes like fantasy stories in her spare time. That's a really good one. Howl's Moving Castle's really good. Like, really the only one that might upset you is Graveyard of the Fireflies, but
yeah. Was that by Miyazaki?
Yeah.
Okay. Which is probably how he was able to finagle the secure it. I think this was a movie that was just so dear to his heart. He just wanted to get it out, even if it wasn't. But I'm like that's messed up though. Don't watch those two in the sitting and expect to feel the same after both.
Well, and again, one is very much not for kids. The Graveyard of the Fireflies has some extremely harrowing and disturbing imagery, so it's like that's so weird to me. Again, like I love the metaphor of like Beauty and the Beast, Silence of the Lambs double feature. It's like they're both excellent movies, but that doesn't necessarily mean you should bundle them together.
Yeah. Like, I mean they were both anime films, but that's pretty much where the similarity stops.
Well, it'd be like bundling it with our second review for this month.
Yes, so we will be getting to that. We will be getting that in our next episode.
But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed listening to this. We're almost in summer. Hopefully you guys are getting vaccinated out there and staying distant and keeping your masks on and all that stuff, but
and to quote another of my favorite YouTubers, staying away from stupid people.
But yeah, glad to see you guys are enjoying us on Spotify and other platforms, and we're just really happy you guys are listening to us, and we're looking forward to producing some more content for you guys, and yeah, we'll see you next time.
Reels on the Rocks is a production of La Prince Laboratories. It is edited and produced by Alejandro Castillo and features original artwork by Asa Sparza and original music by Pat Mars. Follow us on Twitter at Reels on the Rocks and tweet at us with any movies or topics you'd like us to discuss in the future.